Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, and we're at the NGA booth here at GeoINT 2022 here in Denver, Colorado. I have the pleasure of talking with NGA's Gary Dunow, the Associate Director of Enterprise at NGA. Gary, can you just briefly introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what got you actually in the GeoINT community? How did you start off, first of all?
Okay, yeah, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity first for the interview. Really interesting story, what got me into the GeoINT community. I was an Air Force officer. I did 20 years in the Air Force, and my last job before coming to NGA as a captain was working as an aide for a general, and I got a call out of a blue from a friend of mine that I went to OTS with who said, I have this job that you should be really interested in. And I said, what is it? And I wasn't in a classified environment, and he said, well, I can't tell you. And I said, I'll take the job, because we were just that good of friends, and it turned out to be working in what is now Source. And that was the beginning of a civilian career that now is 17 years long with NGA.
Awesome. And at the end, I might ask you a few more questions about helping inspire youth towards this career path that you've chosen too.
Yeah,
so to kind of get right into it, in terms of, can you explain your role a little bit at NGA?
Yeah, happy to do that, because I know it's not necessarily self-evident from the title. A lot of people are confused about what the enterprise is. So my job encompasses a number of things. The main thing is leading the director's partnership priority. So I'm responsible for all of our partnerships across the international spectrum, as well as DoD, government, commercial, and industry. And so in that role, I try to bring everybody together to work in the most efficient way possible against the many GeoINT missions that we execute. I'm also responsible for performing the functional management role on behalf of the director. So part of that is leading the community as well. And so I run something called the GeoINT Committee, or the GeoCom, where we talk about the big problems that face the GeoINT community. And then the last piece is we work requirements with the Department of Defense and with ODNI, and capabilities of new systems that are coming on board to make sure we're ready for those systems and we can integrate them in a most efficient way.
And these major problems you talk about in these committees, these are the things that get translated into requirements back to industry, right?
They do, yeah,
okay.
They do.
Excellent. Well, to go down to a couple questions here, I want to start off by asking you, what are some of the major priorities for the GeoINT community in the coming 5 years, and where would you like to see the greatest innovations?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll reference our 2035 CONOPS. I know you said 5 years, and I'll talk about why 2035 and 5 years kind of mesh in this case. We had the community come together under the auspices of the GeoCom and write a CONOPS of what we want to be like in 2035. Most of what you'll see in there is really 5-year targets from my perspective. 2035 is too long for those. So there's 3 major end states. We talk about an interoperable GeoINT environment, sensor to effect capabilities, and GeoINT superiority from space. So those are the 3 things I think we really need to focus on. And so really, I think from an industry perspective, what we want there is the ability to have proliferated architecture in space that is survivable, reliable, and resilient, and trusted, right? So when the data comes down, we know it hasn't been manipulated. The interoperable GeoINT environment means that data can flow to any consumer who needs it, when, how, and in the format that they need. And that ties into sensor to effect, because in order to get sensor to effect, you need a data-centric, multi-domain, multi-int environment where it's really all about the data and not necessarily about the long-term analysis that gets put into the data. That's still required for a lot of problems, but where we're moving in the future is speed of data.
Excellent. And to continue on with that line of questioning here, how do you help all these various industry partners and entities coordinate together to further the industry as a whole? And I think that goes along with your roadmap too. And then what are the current challenges to create that cooperation?
Yeah, so it's a big challenge, right? I like to use the comparison with China in this case, because I think it's pretty illuminating. When you look at China from a GeoINT perspective, they're very homogeneous. Whether you talk about their government capabilities or their industry capabilities, there really is no differentiation between the two. They're all driven by the same priorities, and they're not, at least as far as I can tell, fighting against organizational boundaries, parochial attitudes, and resource battles, right? Where on our side, we've got a lot of different entities that do GeoINT, both inside the government and industry and academia. And that's good because you get a lot more diversity of thought, you get a lot more innovation, but tying it together is really messy, right, and hard. And you end up having, I think, from a diversity perspective, you want that different perspective, but sometimes you get competing perspectives or competing initiatives that make us inefficient with our resources. So finding a way to maybe balance that tension on the industry side of making a profit, and on the government side with being the most efficient with our resources, because we have to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars and get after the problem where both sides can be satisfied.
Are there still, that kind of go along with those challenges and hurdles, especially with incoming technology and through acquisition, are there still major cultural shifts to be had with bringing on machine learning and traditional analysts?
I think there absolutely are cultural shifts. There's still a lot of people who don't trust the data, who don't trust the machine to make the right call. Whether it's a false positive or a false negative, there are significant ramifications depending on the use of that AI/ML capability that people are very wary about. But I think we do need to start trusting the data more, and it's really driven by the mission, right? So if you have a mission where time is very critical, I think you have to have a lot more trust in the AI/ML, because the human won't do it as fast as the machine will. Of course, you need a lot of humans to put the AI/ML in place, right? So I always hate, and that's another cultural issue, right? I hate folks who talk about AI/ML like it's going to eliminate the analysts. I think what we've found and what industry has found is you actually need more humans to do this, because you got to train the machines, and the problem doesn't stay static. So you need people to stay on top of it to make sure we're evolving the solution as the problem evolves.
While at the same time maintaining your skills as an analyst with
Absolutely.
the tradecraft, right?
Absolutely. People are the key to all of this.
And so the next one here is dives into current events a little bit. The GeoINT community, both defense, commercial, and open source, has played a huge role in the Ukrainian crisis. Mm-hmm. How did the community pull together and continue to aid the Ukrainian military against Russia?
Yeah. So I would add the international partners to that. What we did is back in January, we held one of our GeoINT committee meetings, and we allowed the EUCOM J2, Major General Tim Brown, to tell us what he needed in order to be ready for the fight. And so they gave us some requirements, and they prioritized those requirements, and we were able to take those and act against those as a community. But prior to that, we spent a lot of time over the last 3 to 5 years working with partners, building trust, showing people how to communicate with each other in the event of a crisis, but also showing trust in our analytic tradecraft, in the technology that we have. And all of that investment has now proven itself very valuable in Ukraine, because we were able to, even before the conflict started, use our partnerships in Europe to inform the governments in those countries about the crisis that was developing and get a united perspective on that I think you saw represented through NATO and others, that allowed us to be ready before the conflict happened. The other thing I think we saw was a lot of use of open source data, or releasing intelligence at the right level in order to get ahead of the information operations that Russia has been so very spectacular at historically. And in this case, I think we really took it to them and won the battle there, and
yes,
continue
sir.
to.
Excellent. And then the last big question, and it's a follow-on from this last one, is war is often a time of innovation. What are some surprising ways GeoINT technology was used in the Ukrainian crisis that you predict will be used more frequently in military events around the world?
So I think the biggest one is the one I just talked about, that information operations and putting information out in the public that helped build trust in the assessments that the intelligence community was providing, that we were right and that we were taking the right actions. But I also think the commercial imagery industry has done a really good job of being forward-leaning, taking some initiative, providing information to folks on the ground who aren't your traditional intel users, to help the Ukrainians put the right force in the right place. And by force, I don't just mean military. It's the civil and humanitarian perspective as well.
Yes, sir. So those are the hard questions. The easy question as we wrap up is, I want to ask you, do you have any words of wisdom for inspiring young youth to get involved with the geospatial industry?
So I think GeoINT is the most important, most foundational, but also the coolest intelligence discipline out there.
Why would you think that?
Because you get to take a lot of different things. So this will be a controversial statement, a little provocative, but I'm going to say it. I think all data is GeoINT, right? Because everything happens in a time and place, and when you enable that through GeoINT technologies and capabilities, you see a picture that most people don't get to see. And you get to tell a story that really matters and makes a difference and has a positive impact. Again, from a civil defense, humanitarian, HADR, there's a lot of diversity in our mission and a lot of diversity in opportunities. And so I think the world is kind of your oyster if you want to be an intel professional inside the GeoINT world.
Oh, everything connects back to location, and being a part of organizations like NGA help you understand that better.
Absolutely, and I think we're just really tapping into the opportunities that GeoINT-enabled data provides.
Well, I appreciate your time with us, sir. This is Gary Dunow of NGA, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.